So one of the reasons that I bought Tesla for Horizon 4 or 5 weeks ago was what I had a thesis which was stacked with reasons. One of them was they're launching this entry level car for 25 grand. Well, that's been put on ice immediately. And in fact, when I made the buy alert, I said news for this company is going to change faster than we possibly can publish it. So they've iced their 25 grand car, but on the same day, Elon came out and announced the robo-taxi announcement. And he apparently now has told the employees that instead of building a mass market EV, he wanted to focus completely on an autonomous vehicle that would make other vehicles obsolete. So the minute that they announced to be no entry-level Tesla, the words make other vehicles obsolete hit the airwaves, and that's fighting talk.
Hi there, and welcome to Stock Club, a podcast brought to you by My Wall Street. Before we get into it, a word from our sponsors at Vodafone Ireland and their new cloud-based unified communications product, Vodafone UC. This is a technology that integrates various communication and collaboration tools into a single system. These tools typically include voice, video conferencing, instant messaging, email, and file sharing. All the good stuff. Basically everything we use in business. They've partnered with RingCentral to roll out Vodafone UC for organisations of all sizes in Ireland. This is great for business. It's already available in countries like Italy, Spain, Portugal, Germany, and the UK. And this solution allows businesses to facilitate seamless communication and collaboration from virtually any device, anywhere, at any time. With this offering, Vodafone Business Ireland and RingCentral are helping businesses adapt to the evolving landscape of hybrid work. Emmet, how we doing?
How are you, Mike?
How are you getting on?
I'm doing good. What part of the world are you in today?
I'm in lovely sunny west of Ireland, would you believe? Looking out at blue skies.
Yeah, I heard that untypically the west is getting the sun this time, where the east coast where I'm sitting is actually grey, overcast, rainy, and a little bit on the cold side.
Yeah, well, it's cracker of a day so far, but it's only been an
Ah.
hour of waking time, so as you can tell.
Yeah, well, the Irish gratuitous how's the weather conversation. We've just broadcast the Irish opener to every conversation around the world.
I have a good one for you though, around Amazon stock. I thought this is really interesting if you look at the stock chart. So basically, in the last couple of weeks, Jeff Bezos keeps selling stock when it goes above 200.
Really?
Yeah, have you seen this?
200?
200
No, I
bucks a
didn't.
share or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's all-time highs. I think the highest since near IPO or whatever, or .com. But
Uh,
he sold 5 billion worth 7 days ago when it hit all-time highs, and he sold another 900 million worth yesterday when it went above 200 again. So he's kind of, and it's really funny, he's kind of putting this ceiling on the stock price temporarily.
Yeah, that
So
is it's true. I mean, when you look at those kind of few world dominant leaders flogging their stock at a price, you're like, hold on a minute, what does he know that I don't, or what does she know that I haven't seen?
oh, well, I wouldn't, like we always talk about it, people buy for one specific reason, they can sell for a lot.
Oh
Like
yeah,
Jeff Bezos is just cashing out at a price he likes. But if you're, and I don't have any pity for traders or whatever else, but if you're trading Amazon stock and it's got all the momentum to go
yeah.
up until Jeff Bezos puts a $5 billion anchor on it, it's tough going.
Well, you're dead right. In fact, the point you made there, I was obviously being just a throwaway comment, but the fact is you can only infer information from insider buys, whereas you just cannot deduce anything from an insider sell. But to the point you're making, God knows what he's trying to put on the moon now. What was his last thing? Blue Origin, that's still going. We haven't heard news on Blue Origin in quite a while since AI became the hottest trend on Wall Street.
I don't know. I'd say he's just spending it on steroids. But before we get into the show, you said you want to do a quick sneak peek for our listeners. So what have you got cooking up?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yes, thank you for remembering. I nearly forgot. Well, as you know, Mike, my Wall Street Invest service, which only costs the price of a steak and chips in Paris, recommended Keyword Studios, which is a Dublin-based company at the end of March, and it was very recently taken private at £25.50p a share, or about 32 bucks 40 cent at the time of the offer, which was 90% up since it was published to Charging and Fearless, which is the name we've given our weekly recommendation service that you get as an Invest subscriber. Well, if I was to buy this week's Charging and Fearless, and the next two, which are going live next Tuesday and the Tuesday after, I'd be a very happy investor. And I'm going to give the three headlines that are locked and loaded. Well, one is published. So the Charging and Fearless stock picks headline from Tuesday gone was innovative energy drink brand on the path to global expansion. And, you know, I don't want to call it the next monster, but a lot of other investors, early stage investors, are doing it. And anyone who's been around the block will probably know what business it is by that description. Next week's headline is New CEO's Proven Track Record Positions Fitness Franchisor for Growth. And I'm sure by sticking that into GPT, you'll find out who it is pretty fast. However, I think it's an absolutely brilliant opportunity while this stock is basically, it seems to be going through a turnaround. And as soon as this individual who has an amazing track history was announced, money started to go back into the business, but it's early days. And then the third one, which is Tuesday after next, is the headline is a big dog in cloud application monitoring. And again, seasoned investors would probably be able to infer what stock that is. So I think all of that is to say that every single week we publish a stock that's been deeply researched, 52 a year, as you well know, Mike, as you and I are the gatekeeper on what gets published and not. And I think it's the best 100 bucks anyone will ever drop. Oh, see the show notes for a link.
Oh, man. Okay. There's one stock I really want to talk about, and it's very topical, and that's Tesla. It's been on an absolute rocket ship over the last month. Is that fair to say? Month and a half? I think it's it hit a low at the end of April, which was very fast dip, we'll say, and it's up about 90% since, or something like that. It's absolutely nuts. And you kind of picked up on this pretty recently in Horizon. About 4 weeks ago, you made your first Tesla buy. You obviously spotted, I don't know, say irrational selling, something along those lines, and it's up about 50% since. So I think it'll be interesting to discuss what drove Tesla so high in such a short period of time. And I guess just instead of telling us what the business does, what I'm sure everyone knows at this stage, how does it make money, Emmet, today is a better question.
You're right. And it's really, how does it make money today is the pertinent question, because there's actually not even a point to talk about Tesla in a full year. So let me start by just telling you how it made money and how much money it made in the last quarter. So which was Q1 2024, and it took in about $21.3 billion, which was an 8.7% decline compared to the same quarter 1 year earlier. And as I think most of our listeners know, you usually compare Q1 this year with Q1 a year ago because seasonality and all that kind of stuff. But it was down, let's just say 9% in revenue from a year earlier, which is not a good look, as you would say, and possibly driving the downward pressure that you just described. However, for the full year ending 31st of March, just gone, 2024, revenue reached about $95 billion, which was a 10% increase year over year, which is not great, to be honest. Or certainly, I'm a growth investor. I try and find businesses that are growing revenue by at least 20% per year, and ideally quarter on quarter. And adding to the fact that the company cautioned in March that growth in vehicle volume for this year might be significantly lower than the previous year. So altogether, that wasn't a very uplifting set of announcements. So shares fell from about 250 bucks in December to about 150 bucks in April, which you mentioned. And we'll go there in a minute. We'll go deeper in that in a minute. But so last quarter, car sales accounted for 18.8 billion of the revenue. So that's about 88% of the quarter's revenue, and also a 4.7% year over year decline compared to the same quarter a year earlier. Services and other stuff came in at about 1.6 billion, which was a 33% increase year over year, and that's 7.5% of revenue. And then their energy generation and storage was less than 900 million for the quarter, which is about 4%. So net upshot is 88% of Tesla's revenue in the last quarter was from vehicle sales. And that's how it's currently making money.
That's how it makes money. But if car sales are down, why is the stock going up so much, especially in such a short space of time?
Well, as all of our listeners know now, share price moves more on future promises as opposed to what the past has delivered. Like
Yeah.
it
So
is a voting
it's
machine.
expectations more so
Yeah.
than actual reality, or at least past
Oh,
realities,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
No question or doubt about it. So the first thing was that there was a strong Q2 2024 for delivery numbers. So they'll usually give their delivery numbers ahead of the actual quarterly results. And they announced 445,000 vehicles were delivered, which exceeded analysts' expectations of 439,000 units. So that's only 6,000 more cars. When you're talking about 445,000 cars, versus an expectation of 439,000 cars, it's only about 1% or 1.3% more. So it's hardly anything to get exercised about. So it's very banal news. And then when they heard Bank of America and Wedbush securities analysts lifted their price targets to $260 and $300 respectively, and they expressed opinion and optimism about Tesla's potential, which is gas really, and that fueled the stock's rally. So really the fact that the Q2 delivery numbers were above expectations, albeit marginally, created a degree of hype. But that's fine. But that's just another quarter at the office. But what really got the world excited and has the world excited right now is growing anticipation for Robo-Taxi Day. So Tesla is scheduled to unveil its highly anticipated Robo-Taxi on August the 8th, which is just 4 weeks away. And as you can imagine, analysts, investors, and everyone else is excited about it because it's viewed as a really significant step towards Tesla's full driving capabilities and autonomous future, which we've spoken about on this show on multiple occasions in the past. So here's what we know. The announcement about the August 8th announcement came in the form of a tweet from Elon, which was on the same day as Reuters reported that the company has cancelled its plans to build the more affordably priced electric vehicle, which was kind of being touted as a 25 grand car. So one of the reasons that I bought Tesla for Horizon 4 or 5 weeks ago was what I had a thesis which was stacked with reasons. One of them was they're launching this entry level car for 25 grand. Well, that's been put on ice immediately. And in fact, when I made the buy alert, I said news for this company is going to change faster than we possibly can publish it. So they've iced their 25 grand car, but on the same day, Elon came out and announced the robo-taxi announcement. And he apparently now has told the employees that instead of building a mass market EV, the 25 grand car, which is now nice, he wanted to focus completely on an autonomous vehicle that would make other vehicles obsolete. So the minute that they announced to be no entry-level Tesla, the words make other vehicles obsolete hit the airwaves, and that's fighting talk. And he has long teased the possibility of a Tesla robotaxi. I mean, years ago, he said that Tesla owners would be able to earn revenue from autonomous cars by sending them out to pick up passengers, kind of like an automated Uber, if you will. When you're not using your car, you can send it off and it'll make money for you. And he also described a so-called Tesla network in his master plan part 2, where he said, you'll be able to add a car to the Tesla shared fleet just by tapping a button on the Tesla app and have it generate income for you while you're at work or on vacation, significantly offsetting and at times potentially exceeding the monthly loan or lease cost. So it really sounded like the Airbnb model for cars. If you're not using your bedroom, let it out. If you're not using your car, let it out. So those plans became even grander a couple of years later. So in 2019, he said, by the middle of next year, we'll have 1 million Tesla cars on the road with full self-driving hardware. So Tesla's full self-driving, or FS FSD for short, because that's how it's referred to in the media. So FSD, full self-driving, would be so reliable that the driver could go to sleep, he said, and which you could argue has a dotted line. Well, you don't have to argue, it has a dotted line to a tragic accident we discussed here in Stock Club about 6 months ago. In fact, there's been hundreds of crashes involving Tesla vehicles using FSD and autopilot, and actually dozens of deaths. So the company's facing a load of wrongful death lawsuits, and even the US government is investigating the company's claims around self-driving, and even there was a major recall announced late last year. So this announcement, the robo-taxi announcement on the 8th of August, will have the world looking in a way that I believe we haven't seen since Steve Jobs ran the Big Apple events.
You're giving him an awful lot of credit for someone who's promised robo taxis and full self driving maybe once every 18 months since the last 10 years. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I like as in I'm interested to see, obviously the same with everyone, but we've talked about self-driving and autonomous driving on this podcast a lot before. We joke about the Irish roads with grass growing in the middle of them and how they deal with that.
Yeah, yeah.
How
Well,
much,
look, yesterday I was talking.
I'm just curious,
Sorry.
like, as in how much, in your opinion, do you think is like promises from Elon, and how far away do you think, I won't say Tesla, but in general, how far away do you think those plans are?
That's the question. I agree with that. That's a great question, Mike. And yesterday I was chatting with our former intern and colleague and good friend Colin Moran, who said he knows somebody who's worked with computer vision and AI for years. And in fact, the individual that Colin knows and is related to has worked in the industry. He's now a lecturer in the area. And this individual would be surprised to see level 5 autonomous driving in our lifetime, which actually brought me, and because we were swapping WhatsApps on the subject, I had to hop in to our AI overlord to just get the debrief on what are the 5 levels of autonomous FSD driving, which I'm just going to describe. So level 1 is driver assistance, and I think most owners of modern cars have had some kind of level 1 autonomous
Cruise
driving,
control, you can
where
already
the
call it.
system can cruise control, exactly, and it can also assist with acceleration and deceleration, as you said, but the driver must remain engaged. Level 2 is where the system can control steering and acceleration and deceleration. My own car has a very basic version of level 2 driving. If I hit a button, it will park, and if I go across the white line in the middle of the road, it will correct it. So there's kind of very entry level
They're
FSD,
they're
but the
kind of
driver,
dodgy when that happens. Do you ever feel that
oh, it's
like
disconcerting.
again when you're
Yeah.
on small country roads and you're moving out of the way of a bus or
Yeah.
something and it jerks you back?
Yeah, no, I do not like it. And I've been meaning to switch it off for years. Every time it happens, I'm like, when I park, I'm going to switch that off. And of course, you park, you get out of your car, forget about it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. It just feels, certainly the human brain is far, far, far greater than level 2 full service, full self-driving mode. So then level 3 is what they're calling conditional automation. And the system handles all driver tasks under certain conditions, but the driver has to be ready to intervene when requested, which is, if you would bring yourself back to that time we spoke about a Californian engineer who died while asleep in the car. I think it crashed into a wall, we said, and that was a very good case of why of what we're discussing here, which is where the driver shouldn't really put the seat back and go asleep, no matter what Elon said in a PR. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see on August 8th announcement that level 3, this conditional automation, is what we're being hit with, or a kind of evolved version of level 3. Because when you go to level 4, it certainly right now seems several years out of reach. And again, according to the research I did, 5 years feels about right for level 4, and it's called high automation. And this is the system performs all driving tasks and manages self-critical functions in certain conditions without driver intervention. So that's level 4. So you can kind of see where we're going to. Level 5 is the everything. It's you can sit in the back seat, kneel up, look out the back window, eat a burrito, do whatever you like. But this is basically all driving tasks, monitor the environment under all conditions, no driver intervention required whatsoever. And this is what Colin's friend said may take a lifetime.
Yeah.
What are we going to see on August 8th? You got to think it's either level 3.1 or a then he might attempt to call it level 4 or 4 alpha beta, whatever brand you want to put on it. But that's kind of where we are in the evolution of full self-driving.
Yeah, I think level 4 would be something like what Waymo are doing now, where Waymo have driverless cars going about, but they're in a very
Yeah.
specific area that they know really well. So there's areas in, I think it's Phoenix, Vegas, and certain parts of San Francisco. Is
Yeah,
that
that's right.
correct?
And they have a suitcase on the roof, don't they? It's like just quite a lot of tech sitting up there.
Oh yeah, like because this is the thing, Tesla and Waymo diverged in their approach to self-driving,
Yeah,
where Tesla forewent LiDAR, which was quite
that's right.
controversial at the time. I think they
It
were
was.
so
Yeah.
focused on their machine learning and their AI system in terms of they thought it was so much further ahead, and probably was in terms of the data they could collect, which Waymo couldn't. So
Yeah.
they thought they could do without later. And I think it has proven somewhat successful. I think the advances in AI
Mm,
definitely helped it. But
mm.
Waymo, in terms of what they're doing in specific areas of the country, very, you know, prescribed areas that they know very well. I think if Tesla was doing that, if Tesla promised that, the hype around it alone, I don't know in particular the actual revenue, but the amount of news and furore that would come out of it, if that's what Elon promises in 4 weeks, I think that would be huge. But that seems like a
Mm.
huge step up from where FSD is now.
No doubt about it, because if you think about just that physical hardware that Waymo has installed, if you're going to make that consumer facing and your new Tesla has to be delivered with the same aesthetic as the old one, but it's the fact that he said there are millions of cars with full self-driving already in there, the hardware is in there. You just have to wonder, like, what in fact are they going to switch on in a couple of weeks from now?
Yeah. Okay, before we leave Tesla, you wanted to talk about the robots Elon keeps promising us.
Yeah, I did. I sent you a Slack saying let's just mention the robots because they look so cool. They're brilliant. Go into
For
YouTube,
context,
folks, and
what are
have a
the
look.
robots?
Well, so Tesla has been building a human-like robot called the Optimus, and it drew a lot of attention at the World AI Conference in Shanghai recently, even though the robot itself was inside a glass case. He wasn't walking around, or it wasn't walking around serving drinks. So they had the Optimus Gen 1, which was unveiled a good while ago, and then I think the Gen 2 was unveiled in December, just gone. And basically it looks like something you'd see in Star Wars, but it walks like your granny after a hip operation. Like it doesn't have that. The look on your face, I presume your granny didn't have her hip done,
No,
Mike. Come on. But
my
the
dad did. This is a famous
it walks
story.
like
He was walking down the prom and he
tell
dropped
us.
his headphone and he couldn't bend over to pick it up. He's waiting for like 5 minutes for someone to walk past. It's awful.
Well, I do think the Optimus Gen 2 can get down and pick up the headphone, but it doesn't have the fluidity of maneuver that you would expect in a human body, which is fine because it is not even a commercially available robot just yet. But so it's not as tall as the O'Mahony's. So your dad would have a significant height advantage over the Optimus Gen 2. It's 5 foot 11 inches tall, which I'm sure they've very strategically chosen as not intimidatingly tall, but not considered to be a small piece of hardware. It weighs 121 pounds, which actually means Mike, you and me could beat it in a fight because we're way bigger than that. Even though it's a robot, I think the two of
Yeah, I
us
was
could
about to say
actually.
you could be underestimating the biomechanic strength there.
Well, true. I think anyone who's surfed on robotics might have encountered Boston Scientific's machines a few years ago, and they're just verging on scary. But anyway, so this Optimus, the reason I think it's worthy of conversation, Mike, is that Musk told investors in April that Optimus would be ready in 2025, which is only down the road. I mean, we're talking about 18 months from now. Although he has, as we've already discovered, he tendency just to get us all excited about something in a few months from now. But the reality might prove to be slightly different. And there's plans to use the robots in Tesla factories. And he said they're going to cost the usual 25 grand, 30 grand. Actually, no, sorry, that's not true. He didn't say they're going to cost 25 grand. That's the kind of industry whispers. No official price has been released. And he also said it's going to be far bigger revenue generator for Tesla than cars. And he's talking about massive revenue lines from this new product. And so there you have it. There's innovators like Steve Jobs, to mention him again, or Henry Ford. They see a future and give it to us. And they give us a product that we didn't even know we needed. Now, if we have an Optimus 2 robot that folds clothes, I'm going to buy one and have it stand outside my son's bedrooms and go, when they leave, go in there and make it something that vaguely looks like a bedroom. I think that's worth 25 grand, isn't
Yeah, well, I mean, depends on how many 25 grands you have lying around, but whatever you're into.
it? Yeah, not too many. No, no. I'm obviously tongue in cheek, but when you think of all the domestic chores that a human being needs to commit themselves to, whether it's putting the bins out or the garbage out and wheeling out the wheelie bin and picking up this and washing that, there's a huge amount of our day assigned to tasks that are mindless. And I think there is certainly, when eventually the movie iRobot, which I loved with Will Smith, it's a great movie, great book. When eventually you have this Android that looks after those things that are more banal, it means we can spend more time on TikTok, lying on the couch. That sounds like a great investment.
Yeah, because that movie ended so well for everyone involved.
No spoilers, right, Mike? Look, let's cut the Tesla talk, and I'm sure we'll have to talk about it again, despite our best efforts. And I thought we'd go have a little conversation about something that everyone has spotted, but we've never spoken about here in Stock Club, which is non-alcoholic beer, and in fact, non-alcoholic drinks as a whole. So you've been looking into this field for the first time ever. What's going on?
I know, very out of character for me. But this is an
Oh yeah.
interesting,
It's like, hey, get the guy who does drink to talk about non-alcoholic. I don't drink. You
yeah.
do. I want to be, yeah, we talk about it. Yeah, I guess we're getting a more cynical view from you, I suppose.
We didn't want you to be too biased, Emmet, was the problem. Plus, I wasn't ready to talk about Elon Musk for 20 minutes, so that's how we divvied out the jobs. But
Yeah, true.
this is a really interesting topic, and it was inspired by a particular story from the Wall Street Journal this week about Athletic Brewing, which is the top non-alcoholic beer maker in the US. I was actually shocked to find out that it's outselling Heineken Zero, which
Hmm.
we'll talk about a bit later. But it sold more than 258,000 barrels of beer last year, so it makes it a top 20 US brewery. Considering this is only formed in 2017, it's pretty impressive and just shows how fast this part of the industry is moving. So the story was it recently got financing round, which takes its valuation to $800 million, which is about double what it was from 2 years ago. Now, when we compare it to the big beer brands and the big alcohol brands, it's still very small fries. So, Heineken is 50 billion, Budweiser, AB InBev is 110 billion, Diageo is 70, I think. So what Athletic is doing is very much a tiny portion of, say, the overall alcohol industry, but what it does have is its growth. Heineken, Budweiser, Diageo, Molson Coors as well, they've all way underperformed the market over the last 5 years. So it puts it at a really interesting point at the minute.
Mm, it certainly does. So why? Like, why do you think this is? What's the like? When you described this, what flashed in front of my mind was the podcast we did at the very, very early days of Stock Club, where we were talking about Beyond Meat and how it was out to disrupt the traditional meat market. And when you look at how Beyond Meat has performed, despite the promise it's just been an abysmal performer as an investment. What's going on there with the equivalent in alcohol-free businesses?
Well, not so much alcohol-free businesses. We're talking about Athletic doing well, but the alcohol businesses themselves
Mm,
have been suffering. And we go through a lot of phases in the alcohol industry. I think that's fair to say.
Mm.
Non-alcoholic beer is now the fastest growing segment of the beer market. But before that, we saw a lot of fads grab attention very quickly and then slowly fade away. Craft beer were one, hard seltzers more recently. They've obviously not faded completely, but they hit a peak and then recede. There was a
Mm.
serious amount of hype around hard seltzers there for a long time, and they're still popular. But
And what, I don't even know what that is. What's it called? A hard seltzer.
the
What
hard
is that?
seltzers are the White Claws, the Heinekens. You've surely seen them. They're like a tall can of Coke,
Oh, now
basically,
I
and
remember.
they're beer. They're not beer, obviously, but they're alcoholic drinks
Yeah.
that taste like pre-mixed
Oh,
vodka sodas with
yeah, of
flavor. Yeah,
course.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I know them. I know them. Yeah, they're like Alco Pops. They're a little bit too
Basically,
easy to
yeah.
drink.
Too easy to
Yeah,
drink is a
gotcha.
good analogy
Yeah.
for sure. But with the non-alcoholic trend, it feels slightly different. I think it could be telling of a greater undercurrent, and most of that is happening is that just people are healthier across the board and they're drinking less, and
Mm.
especially young people, which is really interesting. So in 2023, US beer sales hit their lowest in the past 25 years. A lot of this comes down
Mm.
to Gen Z. So a recent survey
Yeah,
said that Gen Z had the lowest alcohol consumption of any adult age group in the US, with 58% of legal drinking age respondents saying they had drunk alcohol in the past 6 months. So basically,
amazing.
42% of Gen Z of legal drinking age doesn't drink or didn't drink in the last 6 months. What's more interesting as well is not only they're drinking less, but they're drinking less beer too. 87% had consumed spirits, while only 50%, 6% had consumed beer. So what we can take
Wow.
from that, and I think this is where hard seltzers do come into the equation. Do you know what I mean? If
Yeah,
we didn't, me and you didn't have the options growing up. Beer was a very acquired taste for a teenager, and there was a lot of suffering through. If
yeah,
you gave
that's
someone
right.
a flavored sparkling water instead, you can see how easy that would be as a separate option. But I think calories comes into play too, in terms of self-image. The people who've grown up on social media are so much more healthy, so much more, we'll say, body oriented, gym oriented. Going
No
out and
question or
drinking
doubt about
two,
it.
going out and drinking 2,000 calories of beer,
Yeah,
it's not the
yeah,
same.
it's
There's
not.
another interesting reason as well, and it comes down to, this is obviously US specific, which is weed. Like, so there was a projection from TD Cohen. They said that in the next 5 years, cannabis will gain 18 million users, while alcohol could lose 2 million. And this shift is
Wow.
already, yeah, it's significant, but the shift is already well underway as well. So another study, I'm quoting a lot of studies here for all this, mostly
Mm.
because I don't know, but Carnegie Mellon published a survey in May, and for the first time ever, daily or near daily users of marijuana surpassed alcohol. Now,
Really,
daily users
that's
of
incredible.
alcohol isn't a great look, especially for any industry. No one wants to promote that, but
No,
it just shows that usage of weed is really outpacing usage of alcohol in any form. So, yeah, it's a
if
very strange point.
and you see it everywhere. I've got a 18, nearly 19-year-old son, and when I see him with all his friends, certainly when I compare to when I was 19, the characteristics and the behaviors of how they engage with alcohol are entirely different. In my first day of college, I remember, which was around September 1992, so whatever, 32 years ago, everyone crashed into the pub, the college pub. Everyone was passing around pints of beer. I remember I didn't like it at all, and I didn't like the taste. And I was remember thinking, how do all these other 17-year-olds, how come they've got such a fierce thirst? How come they're so experienced in drinking? And I think everybody was kind of faking it till they made it. And lots of them made it insofar as they became pretty good drinkers over the course of the subsequent 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it was. Um, anyway, what happens next for the top alcohol companies? This is clearly a juncture in the evolution of some of the biggest brands that we've seen over the last probably 100 years.
Completely. And the honest answer is, I don't know. It's going to be a very hard task. Like,
Mm,
you're talking about piling into the student bar when you're 17 to convert Gen Z
yeah.
to move away from their gym bunny phases to become degenerates, that's a really tough
Yeah.
ask. Like I feel like that's something you get out of your system early. Do you know what I mean? You have a very short window when it's socially
Yeah,
acceptable to be falling all over the place
that's
drunk.
right.
You don't start that when you're
Yeah,
26 or
that's not.
27. So yeah, honestly,
Nobody has ever looked good drunk. Nobody just, they don't. They might feel better. They might think they're funnier. They might have more confidence, but nobody looks better when they're drunk. I quit after my 40th birthday because I had a 2 day hangover. I said, I'm not doing this again. And it just, you kind of, I agree with you. It's a phase of life thing. You just go, I'm not, I just can't handle this. And it's a funny kind of hobby. It very much feels old fashioned now to go out and socialize with a whole pile of drink. It just seems to be something that's not in my line of sight anymore. It reminds me of Constellation Brands, who own Corona beer. I think they own 20% of, oh, here I go. I'm going to try and remember a statistic that's ancient, but Corona, our Constellation Brands, they have a massive cannabis business. Um,
canopy
is it
growth.
called Canopy? Canopy Growth. Yes, exactly. I think they own 20% of Canopy Growth. And they really bet on this early, which is pretty smart considering their flagship product ended up coincidentally having the same name as the world's biggest pandemic.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh well, there's Corona. It's not the hottest name we can use. So yeah, and it's very interesting that their strategy has played out to be quite astute. And when they announced it years ago, I thought that's insane. What are they up to? But they could see the longer game, obviously.
Well, yes and no, though, because they've spent billions and they've written off a lot of that investment already. I think
Hmm.
the
Is that
the
right?
cannabis business is so murky and it's not straightforward, if that makes sense. So we're talking about Constellation. You can't just go in and buy, we're talking about Athletic Brewing. Like if
Hmm.
Constellation Brands bought Athletic Brewing, they would have a really significant stake in the non-alcoholic beer industry straight away. With the weed industry, it's not as easy to do that. And like Constellation Brands were the first one to invest very heavily back in whenever the top of the hype cycle was in 2017, 2018. But in terms of regulation, they bought a Canadian company, all of this messing around. It hasn't really paid off. And there isn't that one company you could go in and buy that would give you direct exposure. It's so much more erratic and fragmented. So while they spotted the trend and people moving away from beer to weed, I don't know if they capitalized on it fully. And that's where I think the beer industry in general will suffer. It's going to suffer from a lot of ways.
And then, Mike, there's the proliferation of non-alcoholic drinks that are infused with something else. There's a local brand here in Ireland called Parachute, and it has CBD, which is a byproduct of, I think it does stand for cannabis. It's the less
Cannabinoid or something like
uh,
that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and there's loads of drinks infused with CBD, and then there's another range of drinks that are infused with something else altogether, some kind of strange botanicals. And I was given a gift of a bottle of a product called Sensia, Sensia. There you go, big fat plug. And it was too easy to drink. To come back to that, it was a very aesthetic bottle. It was a very pleasant tasting drink, and I didn't read the label. And the label said, don't drink more than 100 mils. And I drank half the bottle because honestly, it was just like drinking a soda. It's not a huge bottle. And I noticed a couple of hours later, I hadn't shifted off the couch. I was literally so comfortable. I just went off to another place altogether. It was a nice product. And I've ordered
two thumbs
48
up.
bottles of.
But that I think you're
Yeah,
speaking
5 stars.
you're speaking to a good example of what the big beer companies and alcohol companies in general are facing, which is such a fragmented
Yeah,
competitive landscape. So we've got these
yeah,
random CBD infused non-alcoholic options. We have the non-alcoholic beer, we have weed, we have the gym. It's kind of a bit
yeah,
like when Reed
yeah,
Hastings was talking about Netflix and he said our number one competitor is sleep. It's like they're fighting too many
yeah,
battles, and the one constant amongst all of that is people are drinking less. Do you know?
yeah. When you think about what problem does alcohol solve, if we put it like that, the problem it solves I guess, is unlocking. It brings you it brings you to a different place or a different phase in your head and a different set of perceptions. And there are so many other better ways to, let's say, unlock your mind or to step out of your whatever troubles you might have. And you hit it there. Like, I think you get to my age and your age and find that an amazing workout creates far better feeling than a whole pile of drink. I've never met anybody who said they enjoyed that hangover. So when you find alternatives to hangovers and there's upside with no downside, whether it's one of the alcohol-free alternatives or exercise or whatever it is, you can see why alcohol is in slow decline because it just and we're also, so whenever you see the top 5 things you should do to live longer, have a better heart, or have to basically maximize your health, usually one of the first things you hear is stop drinking alcohol. So really the message is coming at us from all quarters and the alternatives are coming to us from all quarters. And I think is one to certainly watch. And that's why I've had an aversion to investing in booze companies over the years, like Diageo or Boston Beer, Sam Adams. And I just don't think there really is a blisteringly bright future in businesses that are just sticking with the good old-fashioned booze.
You're right. And I just want to finish up on a few comments from Heineken themselves. So they made some very interesting stuff. Obviously, Heineken Zero is the fastest growing part of the business. But in terms of, I thought it was very interesting how they framed it. So I'm just going to read a quote here. So they've said that alcohol-free beer needs to account for at least 10% of global beer sales to become an established form of consumption. And I thought this was an interesting way of saying established form of consumption. Like you would just walk into the pub and order a Heineken Zero. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just that
yeah.
viable option. So
That's right.
it estimates it's only about 2% now. So there's definitely a huge area of growth for them. But it shows how far the industry has to come. Obviously, it's, I think, more common in Ireland here, but in the States, in like South America and a lot of other regions, it's not really getting through fully at all yet. So Heineken are putting huge efforts towards its branding around that. It said 25% of its branding investment is going to go into the alcohol-free category, and it wants Heineken 00 to be the world's largest non-alcoholic beer brand. But even then, even when all of that comes through, and it is a success, and Heineken Zero is there as the fourth option beside Heineken, Guinness, Carlsberg, whatever. Just anecdotally, people don't consume non-alcoholic drinks in the same way they're going to consume alcoholic ones. So
No, not at all.
even if it is a success, surely volume then becomes an issue instead of going out
Mhm.
for, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't want to incriminate myself here, but I was saying, like, if you have a big night and you have
Too
eight
late.
pints, you're not going to stay out and have 8 pints of non-alcoholic beer and do the same stuff you would if you had
No way.
eight pints of alcoholic beer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And by the way, I bet you that most people who are broadly in our circle, what I mean is Irish people, some early 30s to late 40s, completely listen to what you just said and don't bat an eyelid, 8 pints. Yeah. Where I'm quite certain there's people in America going, eight pints? What? And it's like just that's a starter pack for some lads.
I was about to say,
I bet you,
you
but
could
it's
undersell
also
it a
the
bit.
concept. Yeah, and when you think about the psychology of a round, certainly for years and years going into a round was where, for those who aren't familiar with it, you bought a drink for everyone you were with, and then the next person took their turn and so on. And you walk into a room and there's 5 of you, and if someone buys a round, there's this kind of instant buy-in. We're having 5 drinks. You walk in and the guy at the top, but there's 7 of you. You're like, oh God, I'm in here now for 7 drinks. That is not going to be the case if you're drinking NA as a fact. I drink Guinness Zero, which I think is an absolutely beautiful drink. It's just like the alcoholic version. There's no way I drink 7 pints of it. If I drank two, it would be actually quite a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, big time. So yeah, I don't really know. You're probably pretty prescient in avoiding alcoholic companies for the last while because the future looks a bit questionable and the trends seem
Hmm.
very much demographical, if that makes sense. It's younger people who are going to make a bigger portion of the drinking population, and it just doesn't seem to be that of an interest to them. So yeah, I'm not sure what happens
There's a
next.
lot of the way we engage. I'm loving this conversation, so I know it's probably going on a little bit long. Sorry, folks, but the way we engage with so many products is rooted in traditions. And I was watching a video recently with Rory. Is it Rory Sutherland? He's the marketing expert and strategic expert. But anyway, he was saying we are blind to um the kind of customs of wine in a restaurant. The first thing is when you go into a restaurant, there's two wine glasses in front of every place setting. If you go into a fancy restaurant, which imputes a kind of suggestion that everyone should have wine. You can say most of the table dressing is wine glasses when you go into a half decent place. So that's the first visual cue you get when you go into a restaurant, that alcohol is expected. Second, that we're blind to is that there's usually only one wine menu handed to as many as 6, 8, 10 diners. One. It's crazy. We all get our own food menu, but the reason we only get one wine menu is because the person who believes they have the most authority in the area will go, I'll take that. And then what happens is that individual doesn't want to be seen as cheap. So they're not going to buy the cheapest wine. So they've assigned themselves as the expert. All of this is psychology. You just think about the ordering psychology, and they're going to then get very reductive. Who wants red and who wants white? So the next thing that happened is you've bifurcated the table. Sometimes you'll get alignment. You get a whole bunch of people going, we'll all do red, we'll all get white. But more often than not, when there's a bigger party, they'll do one of both. So suddenly now you have one person empowered to choose two colors of wine, red and white, for everybody at the table, and they're not going to choose the cheapest. And it continues, and it could go on and on about that. But when you look the ritual of drinking wine in a restaurant, it's absolutely absurd. It's absurd. And those rituals carry on into other areas of our drinking life, like rounds, where there's this custom and practice where you just can't be the cheap one. You want to get the first round in, so everyone is sorted. And there's so many rituals around drinking alcohol, right through to the fact that when I gave up alcohol, I had to choose the way I told people because it was an unacceptable thing to say, I don't drink, or sorry, I'm not drinking. You couldn't say I'm not drinking tonight. What are you talking about? And someone would hand you a drink. This is Irish culture for you. Um, and then you go in. So the words you have to choose is, I gave up drink. I had to. They're the only words in Ireland that actually someone looks at you like you're a war hero. Like, did you? Yeah, I had to. Now, the reason I had to was I had to. I didn't like hangovers, but it's like, oh, and there's a silent stare between you and the drink buyer. Like, I see you overcame the demons, did you? And inside you're like, I didn't overcome anything. I just decided I don't want to drink anymore. So there's so many social rituals to booze. However, none of those rituals, to my knowledge, exist in these alternatives, like that drink I mentioned, Sensia. But there's no ritual there. You buy it, you drink it if you like it, you buy more, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
It's when we're talking about Gen Z as well around it, is they've kind of questioned the societal norms of it, whereas it was so
Mm,
readily
mm.
accepted by everyone before them that, oh, you turn, I don't want to say the age in Ireland, 15, 16, 17, it can be whatever, or 18, like a legally abiding as adults. And immediately that's when you drink and that's what you do. And it's just, no one questions like, oh, maybe drink doesn't suit me. Oh, I can't handle the next day. None of that. You just power through. And it's strange that we're talking about the round culture and the wine culture and just drink
Mhm.
culture in general. It's such a socially accepted thing. That's just what we do. And maybe it
Yeah.
shouldn't be. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
Mike, look at us, two Irish lads, never been happier. We're talking about drink for the longest we've ever spoken about anything on the segment. And we're so happy. Like, oh, it's a pity this has to end. Let's keep talking about booze. Anyway, look, let's stop talking about alcohol and do a spin-off called Emmet and Mike Talk About Booze. And let's move on to an elevator pitch. I hope it's for a booze company, is it, Mike?
No, no, but it was
Go on, so
for
then.
it was for a particular company, and I wrote it all up, and then I actually wrote up a separate piece for something else we published too.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
then I realized that that company had been agreed to be acquired about 2 months ago, and
Ah,
I missed the headlines, so I had to rewrite everything and do another
I wondered
elevator
what happened
pitch.
there because I did send you. Okay, now I know what you're talking about because I
Yeah.
sent you a message about said company, but I won't spoil it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the company I'm pitching now is a company called BRP Inc. It's short for Bombardier Recreational Products. It's a Canadian company that it's basically a market leader in recreational vehicles like snowmobiles, jet skis, all-terrain vehicles, and I think it does motorcycles as well, but it doesn't make up a big portion of revenue. So basically, for adrenaline junkies, you'll know all about BRP or its main two brands, Ski-Doo, which is the jet skis, and Sea-Doo. Oh, sorry, Ski-Doo is the snowmobiles, and jet skis are the Sea-Doo. So they would be the kind of famous brands under its remit. Now, this is a funny one because I'm a bit unsure if I actually like this business or not,
Hmm.
but it just popped up on a screener I was doing a few weeks ago looking for cheap stocks, essentially. I can't remember the exact parameters I put in, but it was basically cheap valuation and high free cash flow, something along those lines. So it's trading about 10, maybe 11 times earnings, which honestly makes any business worth reading about more. That can be a very quick read. You can find out exactly why it's trading for 10 or 11 times earnings and go away. But BRP kept me reading a bit longer because it has a very strong legacy, especially in Canada. It's been one of the Canadian stock market darlings. It was basically a seven bagger, more than a seven bagger, seven and a half bagger from 2016 to 2021. 2021 is when it hits its all-time highs, and it's been on the skid since. So I thought it would just be worth looking into because it's obviously a stock that made a lot of money. We had Braden Dennis on this podcast last year. He's the founder of FinChat. He's a Canadian fella from
Yes.
Toronto, and that was the first time he ever
Yeah.
mentioned it. And then it popped up on that screener as well. So I thought it'd be worth looking into. But yeah, the lay of the land at the minute is the company struggling with soft demand. Management put out a profit warning last in Q1. Basically, it brought back its guidance. Said it's struggling with the demand situation and macro and everything else. And it's obviously also a very cyclical industry. These kind of vehicles aren't bought when the economy's in a recession. So
Yeah.
that could be on the back of investor minds too. But it has enough there to make me believe that there could be a lot of turnaround potential. It's got a 37% share in the North American power sports market. It's a clear market leader. Management has already called this a transition year, which, if it only lasts a year, is a great thing to see. Do you know what I mean? If management can get all the bad news out of the way early, then it should only be upside from there. Its valuations come down to a very interesting point. I said 10, 11 times earnings, but it's actually about 6 times free cash flow. So it
Nice.
marks a big potential
Mm.
turnaround. Obviously, there's a lot of execution risk. The argument is predicated on the fact that management has got the bad news out of the way. If that's not the case, see another profit warning, obviously it could go lower. But I feel like there's some leeway in the fact that for the money it's bringing in terms of cash flow and profits, while being this cut down to size in terms of valuation, we'd be able to weather the current storm and have a certain margin of safety there. So it's sitting about a $5 billion market cap, trades under the ticker DOOO on the NASDAQ. It's actually under the Toronto Exchange as well under DOO. And if this is the kind of investment you like, of finding that turnaround, you mightn't have intentions of holding it for the long term, but you just spotted a good opportunity in terms of valuation, and hopefully a management team that can execute on what it's promising. It could be a very interesting business. So that's BRP.
Oh, I'll definitely jump in and have a look. And what struck me as you described it was it's a AI roof. It's not, if you're going to buy jet skis, there's nothing AI can do for you. Maybe get you there quicker, get you to the shop, or get you to the jet ski place. But no, you're on your own. If you're out in a pond on a jet ski, that's it. Good luck, AI. You're out on a jet ski, nothing to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very well business. So that's it. And that's it for today's show. Emmet, thank you very much for joining me. And thank you everyone for listening in on our
Thanks, Mike.
alcoholic rant that we went through. Remember,
Yeah.
to hear
Join us for
more.
our new spin-off podcast. Two pissheads talk about beer all day, only on Apple.
Yeah. Okay. To hear more about the launch of Vodafone Business UC with Ring Central for organizations of all sizes in Ireland, just click on the link in the show notes. Or if you want to receive more details about My Wall Street in general, about Invest at the start of the show, about what we have in store, just sign up at mywallstreet.com and you will receive a bunch of stuff if you just give us your email. Thanks for joining us today, and we will talk to you next week.